So picture like the ultimate military machine. You're a high-ranking officer in an empire that basically rules the known world.
Right. It's the absolute peak of power.
Exactly. You've spent your entire adult life wearing this uniform, enforcing the law, and really building a reputation as a courageous, honest leader.
You're fully bought in.
Yeah, totally. But then tomorrow, your commanding officer, who happens to be the emperor himself,
Yeah.
is going to issue an order that essentially forces you to choose between your decorated career and your soul.
I mean, that is the ultimate collision of duty and identity.
It really is. And it's actually the very real, strictly historical starting point for a man who, well, most people only really know as a guy in shiny armor fighting a giant reptile.
Yeah, St. George.
Right. And since today is Thursday, April 23, 2026, which is St. George's Day, we want to welcome you to this custom deep dive.
It's the perfect day to tackle this.
It really is. And you, our listener, have brought us such a fascinating mission today. You basically want to unpack the true historical story of St. George.
But not just as a dry history lesson.
Right, exactly. You've asked us to help you figure out how to retell this legendary story to a younger audience.
Which is incredibly challenging.
Oh, totally. Translating these heavy, ancient, historical themes into accessible, powerful lessons for kids is hard enough. But doing it when the pop culture version is just entirely saturated with fairy tale imagery, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, we really have to move past the biological, scaly dragon and, the magical sword to find the actual human being.
Because the historical reality is significantly more compelling, and honestly, it's far more terrifying than the myth.
Oh, without a doubt.
So let's start by looking at the world he inhabited. The historical record places George squarely within the Roman Empire many years ago.
Right, he wasn't some mythical knight wandering through an enchanted forest.
No, not at all. He was a respected, really strong Roman soldier. But, for a child hearing this today, the word soldier might just mean someone in a modern uniform.
Yeah, it doesn't carry the same weight.
Right. So in the ancient Roman context, what did putting on that specific armor actually signify?
Well, it signified absolute authority. I mean, the Roman military wasn't just a defense force. It was the primary mechanism of the empire's power, its expansion, and its control over everyday life.
So they were basically the law on the streets.
Exactly. When a Roman soldier walked down the street, they were the literal physical embodiment of the emperor's will.
Wow. Okay, so George wasn't some outsider or a rebel fighting the system from the fringes.
Not at all. He was an integral, highly effective part of that very machine. And he had climbed the ranks based on his own courage and his honesty.
So he's really thriving within this rigid power structure.
He is.
But then the environment just changes overnight. The emperor issues this decree ordering everyone to worship false gods and idols.
And suddenly, Christians are no longer allowed to follow Jesus freely.
Right. The atmosphere immediately turns to intense fear, but I think this brings up a really fundamental question.
Which is,
Why did the emperor even care? I mean, if the Roman Empire was already full of all these different conquered cultures and various gods, why hyper-focus on this one group and force them to worship idols?
that is such a key point, and it's the essential context to understand the stakes here. In the Roman worldview, religion wasn't just a personal, private, spiritual belief like, how we think of it today.
Right, it wasn't just what you did on a Sunday.
Exactly. It was a civic duty. The Roman state genuinely believed that its success, its military victories, and its general prosperity were all directly tied to keeping their gods happy.
Oh, I see. So if you don't worship, you're ruining it for everyone.
Exactly. If a group of people suddenly refused to participate in those state sacrifices, the Romans didn't just see it as a difference of theological opinion. They saw it as active sabotage.
So it's basically treated like a national security threat.
Precisely. Refusing to sacrifice to the emperor's gods was quite literally equivalent to plotting treason.
Wow.
Yeah, it was viewed as endangering the entire empire by inviting the wrath of the gods down on everyone.
Okay, that makes sense. That's why the punishment was so absolute and why the fear among the people was just so profound.
Right, because the state comes down with its full weight.
Thinking about how to frame this tension for a modern audience, especially for the adults trying to understand it before teaching it to kids, it's somewhat like being a high-level executive at a massive global corporation.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, like you've built your entire life around this company. You manage a team, you enforce the corporate rules, and then suddenly the CEO mandates this new policy that just completely violates your deepest moral compass.
And not only that, but because of your rank, you are the one expected to enforce this terrible new rule on your own subordinates.
Exactly. So for George, his deep love for Jesus meant he was suddenly the enemy of the very state he was sworn to protect.
And the stakes there are just incredibly high. I mean, an ordinary citizen disobeying an imperial decree is, well, it's a localized crime.
Right, they just get swept away.
But a respected soldier, an enforcer of the state, publicly refusing to comply. That is a highly visible humiliation of the emperor.
It's a spark that could ignite widespread defiance.
Exactly. It's incredibly dangerous for the empire.
So if George knows this decree is essentially a death sentence, what is his next move? I mean, if I'm putting myself in those sandals, the instinct is just pure survival.
Oh, absolutely. Flee or hide.
Yeah. You use your wealth to flee to the edges of the empire, or you use your military connections to bribe the local magistrate to just look the other way.
But he doesn't do any of that.
No. His preparation for this confrontation is completely counterintuitive. Before he faces any suffering, the historical record shows he gives away all of his belongings to the poor.
And the sequencing right there reveals his entire psychological state.
Because the divestment of his wealth happens before the confrontation even starts.
Right.
Why do that, though? If you know a storm is coming, you usually board up the windows and hoard your resources. He empties his storehouse.
Because he's making a definitive statement about where his security actually lies. I mean, worldly wealth, status, rank, these are the currencies of the Roman Empire.
The things the empire uses to control people.
Exactly. By giving it all away, he is systematically detaching himself from the empire's power structure. He isn't going to negotiate with the system.
He's not leaving himself an out.
Right. He isn't going to rely on a safety net. It is a physical, tangible manifestation of his trust in God.
You know, if you are telling this story to a young child, this is just the perfect moment to pause and ask them a question.
Oh, for sure. What would you ask them?
I'd ask, what do you think is the bravest thing a soldier can do to prepare for a fight?
And they will almost certainly tell you is grabbing a bigger shield, finding a sharper sword, or putting on thicker armor.
Exactly. Kids always go for the physical weapons, and that is exactly when you get to subvert their expectations entirely. You introduce George, giving away his money as his ultimate weapon.
I love that. It fundamentally redefines strength for a young mind.
It really does.
We so often equate faith with just a purely mental exercise, right? Like thinking really, really hard that something is true.
Yeah, I was just hoping it's real.
But George takes faith completely out of the abstract. His profound kindness and generosity are the actual actions that prove his beliefs are real.
Right.
He enters the most dangerous arena of his life entirely empty-handed in terms of worldly power, but fully armored in his convictions.
It's an active dismantling of his own ego. He stands directly before the emperor, literally the most powerful man on the planet, and boldly declares his belief in one true God, Jesus Christ.
And he flat out refuses to offer the sacrifice.
He does. Just picture the visual of that moment.
Striking.
You have the emperor surrounded by guards, wealth, and all the symbols of absolute domination, and standing before him is George, a man who has already given away everything the emperor could possibly threaten to take from him.
Except his physical life, yeah.
Right. The emperor's power relies entirely on leverage. It relies on people being terrified of losing their status, their money, or their comfort.
And George just removed all the leverage.
Which naturally infuriates the ultimate authority. I mean, the consequences are immediate and they are severe.
Right. He is arrested immediately.
And he is treated terribly. He suffers greatly in prison.
And we should clarify, Roman prisons were not just holding cells where you simply waited out a sentence,
You want like modern jails?
No, they were specifically designed for psychological and physical dismantling. The whole environment was engineered to break a person's resolve.
To force them to recant.
Exactly, to strip away their identity until they surrendered to the state's demands.
Yet, amidst all of that engineered suffering, he remains strong. He prays, he trusts that God is with him.
His internal environment remains completely untouched by his horrific external circumstances.
It's incredible. And ultimately, he gives his life for his faith, becoming a martyr. And the definition of a martyr here is really crucial for our listeners' mission.
Yes, how does the text describe it?
It describes a martyr as someone who chooses God even unto death.
The operative word there is chooses.
Right. Martyrdom is not a passive event. It isn't just someone who tragically dies in an accident. It is an active, deliberate choice to elevate a fundamental truth above your own biological survival.
So George wasn't just a victim of circumstance.
Not at all. He was an active participant who made a conscious decision that some things are actually more important than staying alive.
Okay, so let's address the massive mythical creature looming over this entire conversation.
Ah, the dragon.
Yes, the dragon. The historical record we are analyzing explicitly mentions the famous story of George defeating a dragon.
It does.
But it immediately frames this story as a reminder that, with God's help, we can overcome evil and stand for what is right.
So it's clearly pointing to the dragon as a metaphor.
Exactly. But if I'm a parent or a teacher retelling this to kids, I mean, kids love dragons. The dragon is the whole draw.
Oh, absolutely. It's the best part for them.
So if we strip the literal, fire-breathing monster out of the narrative, don't we risk making the story really dry and boring for a 7-year-old? Well, no, not at all, because you don't strip the dragon out. You actually just reveal what the dragon really is.
Wait, how do you mean?
Think about trying to explain systemic bureaucratic oppression to a child.
Okay, yeah, that's impossible.
Explaining how an imperial edict regarding civic religious duties creates a climate of fear is incredibly abstract.
Hmm.
Bureaucracy just does not make for a compelling campfire story.
Once upon a time, there was a really unfair tax law and a mandate for false idol worship. Yeah, you've lost them in 5 seconds.
Precisely. But what does the Roman Empire's persecution actually feel like to the people living under it?
It feels huge.
It feels massive. It feels ancient. It consumes everything in its path. It hoards wealth while people starve.
Right.
It breathes destruction and instills this creeping, inescapable dread. What does that sound like?
I mean, it sounds exactly like a dragon.
Right. The dragon is the perfect storytelling device. It takes the abstract, suffocating terror of a corrupt system and gives it a face, teeth, and claws.
That's brilliant.
For the people of that time, who were absolutely terrified of the emperor's power, painting the emperor and his system as a dragon wasn't just a silly fairy tale.
It was a subversive way to talk about the evil they were actually facing.
Exactly. It was a coping mechanism and a way to share the truth safely.
That completely changes the dynamic of the retelling. You don't have to pretend George was fighting a rogue dinosaur in a cave.
No, you really don't.
You can use the dragon to explain to kids that sometimes the scary things in the real world feel just as big as a monster.
Yes.
Like a bully at school, a system of unfair rules, or just the intense pressure to abandon your beliefs to fit. Those are dragons.
And when you frame the story that way, the resolution becomes so much more powerful.
How so?
Well, if the story is just about a literal monster, then the lesson is basically you need a really sharp magical sword to win.
Right, which isn't very helpful in real life.
Exactly. But if the dragon is the overwhelming pressure to do the wrong thing, then George defeats it not with steel, but with radical generosity, unshakable faith, and the courage to speak the truth even when it costs him his life.
Oh, wow. So the real victory wasn't slaying a biological creature at all. It was refusing to be consumed by the fear the empire was breathing down his neck.
Precisely.
The Roman Empire threw its absolute worst at him. They took his freedom, they tortured him, they took his life, and they still couldn't get him to abandon his truth.
He won.
He absolutely won.
And that is exactly why his legacy outlasted the empire that killed him.
That's a great point.
I mean, the Roman Empire eventually fell and crumbled to dust, but St. George is honored all around the world today. He is the patron saint of England and numerous other places.
The enduring nature of his story just proves that humanity resonates deeply with that kind of moral victory.
It's timeless.
It really is. And it provides a brilliant 3-part blueprint for the kids you are passing this down to.
Oh, I like breaking it down like that. What's the blueprint?
First, be brave. But, define bravery not as aggression, but as the courage to detach from what everyone else values.
Like giving away his wealth.
Exactly. Second, stand for truth, even when the highest authority in the room tells you to lie.
And the third?
Third, trust in God. Just knowing that your internal resolve can outlast any external pressure.
The historical reality really does give the legend its weight. I mean, we're drawn to the dragon imagery because every single one of us faces forces in life that feel too massive, too entrenched, or just too terrifying to conquer.
Absolutely.
But the real St. George proves that the human spirit, armed with truth and generosity, is actually capable of standing firm against the jaws of any empire.
Which brings us to a final thought I really want to leave you, our listener, to mull over.
It's a great question to ask yourself.
Yeah. We've spent this time peeling back the layers of a medieval fairy tale to find the historical grit underneath. And we've seen that the true dragon wasn't hiding in some magical forest.
No, it was the overwhelming, terrifying pressure of a corrupt system demanding a man surrender his soul.
Exactly. So, as you prepare to retell this legendary story, take a moment to look around at the world we live in today. What does the dragon look like right now?
It's different for everyone.
It is. Whether for you personally or for the young minds you are shaping, what is the overwhelming creeping pressure that demands you compromise your values?
And more importantly,
Right. And more importantly, how can you arm yourself with that exact same spirit of radical generosity and quiet courage to face it?
it's something we all have to figure out.
It is. Well, thank you for joining us on this custom deep dive.